Hey everybody, welcome back to Channel Talks. I'm Nick Verikios, your host, and today we're going to delve into a big black hole of an ultra important topic, and that topic being the corporate and commercial drivers that relate to environmental responsibility, a huge issue. All right, but I tend to look at it from the point of view of the return on investment on environmental responsibility, or even more pertinent, from the ethics to income transition. And that's what I'm going to delve in today. Now, to get the most out of this session, I've been doing quite a ton of research actually, and I'm going to be throwing it back to as devil's advocate to my panel. So first instance, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm just going to be throwing what the research is saying back to you. And we're going to get into that real income or business case side of things. So with that, I'm excited to introduce you to a team of pioneers in the environmental responsibility space, my panel, who actually know that without a commercial driver, environmental responsibility remains at that area of ethical or the ethical wish list rather than that commitment. All right, sadly so. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce my panel to you. Thomas Mardahl, the co-founder and chief operating officer at Rejoose, and is also part of the EU Code of Conduct Technical Task Force, which is very impressive. And Matthew Ruskin, who's the chief operating officer of Rejoose and also the founder and managing director of Channel Edge. And as well, we also have Scott Frew, the founder and CEO of iasset.com, who's also a sustainable cattle farmer, smell, and brewer.
There you go. Well, I think you look like you smell amazing, Scott. So ignore me.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. You don't look like you smell that great at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, welcome to Channel Talks. It already looks like it's going to be a great conversation. And Thomas, I want to start with you as founder of Rejoose. Can you explain to my audience the origin story of Rejoose and what you do for the channel?
Yeah, so we actually go back to 2010. We founded a consultancy company working with energy efficiency, energy savings on the back of a financial crisis. Suddenly IT needed to also save money on energy. In that transition from 2010 to 2017, we could see more and more activity on actual carbon footprint coming from energy consumption, but also from the products itself. So in 2017, we decided that our future was not consultancy. We wanted to, let's say, disrupt the consultancy business and going towards collecting and delivering data to the IT channel and moving the whole advisory consultancy part from the accounting firms, from the advisory firms to the channel itself. And by that, we founded Rejoose. We started collecting data in 2017 on the back of us actually collecting data for almost 10 years for Danish government and Nordic companies, also international companies, but based out of the Nordics. And that's set the start for Rejoose, us being a channel provider of carbon and energy data, and we did see both a part where we could actually make a huge difference, but also, let's say, commercialize the aspect of delivering these things. And then again, as you know, we have a lot of directives, things coming out of the EU, coming from the companies, which actually supports this transition.
Yeah. I mean, the timing is perfect, isn't it? And you started talking about from an environmental point. You started talking about energy, but it's not just energy, is it? It's carbon offsets and all kinds of environmental issues.
Yeah, exactly. So we cover what we call the life cycle aspect. So the production part, transportation to country, the use phase, which is the energy consumption, and then the end of life, either going for recycling or for refurbishment. So it's the full life cycle aspects of IT products.
Yeah. Which is amazing. And Scott, so why were you compelled from a real partnership point of view to partner with Rejoose, and what does that look like for iasset customers?
So from a background point of view, when we built Distribution Central I was already trying to engage in the climate issues that were, to me, quite obvious. So in 2004, when we started that business, we started planting a tree for every invoice we generated because, you know, there was a little bit of competitive edge to that because my competitors were having tree planting days. And I said, 5 trees in a park's not going to do anything. Yeah. So we planted over 120,000 trees in that particular business. But that's kind of a passive way to cover it. It wasn't particularly scientific or sophisticated, but, you know, there's still, we're still doing something.
Buy one, get one tree.
Yeah, buy one, get one tree. That was the program. Yeah. So, you know, the next move was to acquire a former industrial beef cattle farm and turn it into a regenerative beef cattle farm. And people can look up how regenerative works, but we're laying down atmospheric carbon using the cattle into the soil rather than, you know, the stuff you buy at supermarkets. The grain-fed cattle are emitting massive amounts of carbon into the air. I can go down that road for hours. But really, what I wanted to do in the IT space is actually be more active in this. Now, if you think for a moment, the iasset platform is really running quoting and life cycles across multiple parties of a channel, vendor, distributor, reseller. It is the perfect injection point for carbon data to present it to a sales rep who's quoting a customer at that point rather than trying to do it as a post-sale exercise, to allow them to see what the carbon impact is of the quote that they're actually doing. And then after they've made the sale, storing the e-voice from Rejoose with the install base so that they can then open up to their customers and show them the impact that they've had on the environment so that they can more scientifically buy offsets or credits. And when I say offsets, I'm not talking about buying a bit of bushland. That is not offsetting carbon. That's just holding what's already there. I'm talking about they can actively get involved in removing carbon from the atmosphere through whichever mechanism they choose.
Yeah, okay. So what I want to do there is dig a little deeper into that whole idea of that sounds great. How does it affect business? All right, from a what a board cares about, what a leadership team cares about, what a C-level cares about. And Matthew, I want to turn to you because in particular in Europe, ESG is a big thing, and it's a thing all around the world. But there's legislation in Europe. ESG for my listeners and my viewers is environmental, social, and governance. It's a European thing from a engagement point of view, but it's a global thing. So I want to know what that, you know, why that matters to the channel, Matthew. And you know, I get the ethical impact piece that we've been talking about up until this point, but how does that, you know, how does caring about ESG accelerating income and profit? Simple as that.
Yeah. Well, it's not as simple as that, and that's, I think, half the challenge. I think that the conversations that we have with the channel often follow a similar pattern, is that we initially engage with somebody who has sustainability lead, net zero lead, something like that in their job title. And in very large organizations, it's typical that they will be the person that deals with the environment, the person who deals with sustainability. And we're talking in some organizations of multiple billions of pounds in revenue. So there is a nod to it. There is we should be doing something about this. But the pressure is actually coming from customer demand. And that customer demand is being driven by maybe taxonomy, or it may be CSRD or other directives that are coming into play and becoming stronger, especially in the EU. So it depends on which market you're in. It depends on which verticals you sell. And it depends on your leadership and whether or not this is a commercial priority for you. What we can tell you is that it's going to be a commercial priority for you. There is no choice in that. That is not a subjective view. That's an objective view. And when you have something that needs to be measured so accurately as your finances and your carbon emissions, then you need the correct data. You need the accurate data to be able to make decisions pre-sale and also track and account post-sale. And it is a complex scenario where I think the C-level is starting to get on board those that are outside of sustainability. because they're seeing the commercial opportunity here. And that's what's driving a lot of the activity that we're seeing today. But getting those commercial people to then translate that down into their sales people, that's where it becomes more of a challenge, because I think one of the main problems around sustainability is, and I've got imposter syndrome like crazy talking about this, because I really came into it in October last year. But I've had a deep sheep dip, if you like, in what sustainability is about. I kind of knew about it. I think most of your viewers will probably have a sense of what it's about and know that we should do something, et cetera, et cetera. But as soon as you kind of start looking into it, it's an enormously complex subject, with specialists coming out of every corner, telling you even more layers and layers of complexity about different directives, about how carbon emissions should be measured, how they should be offset, etc. And it does feel, I think, to the generalist salesperson, maybe too complex. So what do you do when something's too complex? You tend to kind of push it away and go back to your safe and comfort zone of selling something, because the RAM, the bevel, the screen size, whatever it is. Talking about sustainability and talking about carbon emissions makes, I think, the general broad line salesperson quite uncomfortable. So what do you do in those normal situations? If it's on a complex infrastructure deal, you would pass that opportunity over to an infrastructure architect, and they would deal with it for you. The problem with sustainability is most organizations don't have a team that can deal with sustainability or carbon emissions to the same level that they have at a technical level. But we're changing that.
Right. Is that because they don't understand it? I mean, you did say it's a commercial priority. Why? What is it that people don't understand as to why it's a commercial priority for the C-suite?
Okay.
Well, actually, Matthew, I'm going to save you from this one. My best example right now is Lenovo. Lenovo have released servers that consume 90% less power than their historic server base. It takes up a lot less real estate. It's better for the environment in all aspects. So the commercial part of this for a normal salesperson is a massive refresh opportunity. Which one of their customers isn't having problems with energy bills? If they can cut it down by 90% in a server farm, I mean, my God, you'd be crazy not to do it, right? The second part of that is the circularity concept. So where do those old servers come back to? They can be reused in other areas, perhaps not as critical, or they can be deconstructed and the parts used in other machinery. So there's a massive commercial opportunity, and it's all about refresh, which has a positive impact for the environment. But the sales reps actually got an opportunity to go and attack a customer with this sort of outcome.
Yeah,
and if you add to that as well that you've got so many RFPs or tender responses, especially from public sector organisations, that are putting, we're hearing up to 40% weighting with regards to sustainability measurement on the response.
Yeah, so one of the clear commercial responsibilities, Thomas, I want to throw this one onto you, because you've been doing it for so long and you've seen so much and you sit on the right boards. The commercial refresh. I mean, the traditional refresh has always been an opportunity for the channel. Go in there and start a new cycle, right? Have the right data, and the right data using, the right kinds of platforms to be able to create those refresh opportunities, which tend to be end of life, or B, tend to be moving to cloud, or C, moving back from cloud. Right? They're all refresh opportunities, but they now have a new element in there, and that is the refresh side of it from a ethical responsibility point of view when it comes to the environment. Which verticals are you seeing that are jumping in faster than anyone else?
I think we see the future, or we see companies of the world. Right now it starts with the larger companies. They will define, or already is defining, the delivery of relevant carbon information, relevant energy information as licensed to operate. So there's no, you can just live without, or you can do it yourself or something. It is, if you're an IT supplier, and you will face companies saying, this is, if you want to deal with us, you need to deliver this. Of course, there can be changes in the market, meaning that we did see a lot of PCs changes throughout the pandemic of COVID, meaning there is a huge refresh recycle coming up for the coming years. And within that, I'm absolutely certain that salespeople will face a new kind of world, just like we saw when Gartner introduced total cost of ownership, and when we talked about return on investment, you needed to make business cases. You don't just deliver specs and price. Now you actually want, the customers are demanding you are going to be delivering sustainability related information connected to the products. And we absolutely see that going forward, being a salesperson in 2025, if you want to be successful, you need to understand a lot more about sustainability and carbon metrics and so on, not just as both because of your company, the company you're working for has an interest in that, but especially because all your customers are going to require this. And with the coming strengthening of CSRD, now going from the top large accounts to the smaller SMB market, covering 5 times as many companies in EU, the pressure they are providing on all their resellers and the entire IT channel will be 5 times higher demand from 2025 and onwards. So we see, you could maybe call it a paradigm change for a salesperson. You need to adapt to this new world. Sustainability, in the beginning, it was a person sitting over there in the corner working with sustainability, writing nice stories. We will see sustainability people it will be a merged part of the total business, a merged part within the strategy and decisions of companies going for carbon zero. It will be part of their purchasing strategy as well. So things are changing fast.
Okay, so the pitch to the purchasing strategy changed. I mean, it sounds to me like, if I'm a sales professional, what I thought was important in 2024 is not complete, because what you're describing is the 2025 salesperson. Bit different to the 2024 salesperson to be successful, right? I think I'm paraphrasing your own thesis there, Thomas, but I think I'm understanding it. So, but it also comes back to something that Matt said, and it's sitting in my head, which is the C-level get it, but the difficulty, the complexity is translating it back into the salesperson. I think you've just explained it. How to reduce that complexity. I want to ask you all to talk about just to respond to what I just said. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I've got a quick story on that. So hopefully this is relatable. And I know that we're all gentlemen of a certain age, but way back in the kind of early mid-90s, I worked for a cable TV and cable telephone company in the UK. We used to knock on doors selling cable TV and cable phone. And it was a deregulated service, and it was fresh and it was new. And we had this other service drop into our sales folder, right? And it was the internet. And and his name was Dave, I no lie. And he sat, literally what Thomas said, he sat in a corner, and he was the internet person, right? And we used to knock on the door and go, hey, blah, 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 blah. Do you want the TV? Do you want the phone? Do you want the internet? And, every now and again you get someone who's really into that, and they go, oh, yeah, of course, and you talk about how many minutes it took for a full picture to download on the screen. And it was under a minute. It was fantastic. The point of the story is that guy, Dave, is probably living in a mansion in Malibu right now, because he was so early on this, and, he absolutely, rolled it. But within, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we were all selling it. We were all, experts in a subject that we knew nothing about. It was what the hell is that? It's a real niche kind of thing. I think it's a very similar, relatable story to what is happening today. The early adopters in the sales floors that really understand sustainability and the impact it can have on their relationships with their customers they're the individuals that will succeed. But it's getting that story across the sales floor, which is going to be the challenge. The good news is, if someone like me can pick it up in a reasonably short space of time, then I'm pretty sure that, you know, other people in the sales community will be able to do the same thing. Because it is, if you got into the guts of it and you did a 4-day seminar on it, you could get into every single piece of detail. The good news is there's only bits of information that you actually need to pick up and understand, so you can start to have the conversation, which then leads on to passing it off to a specialist.
So, Scott, what tools does the salesperson of 2025 need to execute on what the guys are saying?
Well, of course, I only need one tool, which would be ours, or our platform anyway. But more seriously, the challenge you've got, we've been engaged by a number of resellers, particularly in the United Kingdom and Europe. The problem they've got is that they're tracking so let's just park carbon for a minute. They're tracking of serial numbers, they're tracking of SKUs to those serial numbers, where they are at the customer, who's got what where, is atrocious. I mean, they literally have reps creating SKUs just to get a quote out the door because that's the way they do it. So the first step, any organization to enable, to manage something, you've got to measure it, right? So to enable the first step of this, they have to get super accurate install base. They have to get super accurate SKUs. So they now can overlap the carbon data to them. And to Matt's point about, or it might have been Thomas, about the different measurements, and it's all very complex. Our attitude is we don't care which measurement you like. We'll carry them all. And then your customer can pick which one they prefer as the outcome that they want. And if we don't have, or if Thomas and Matt's system doesn't have the actual SKUs carbon, it'll put the category there. So if it's a laptop that they don't have that SKU, it'll generally calculate it based on a laptop, an average laptop. So again, people go, oh, well, if you don't have the data, we can't do that. I said, well, actually you can, because some information is better than absolutely no information. And I really need to get people to understand, especially the reseller stack, you now have to operate like distributors do. You have to be super accurate along the lines of the products, because when you add carbon to it, you've got to be able to calculate it out. And if you haven't got the first part settled, you'll never get the second part, and you will lose to your competitors because people will start demanding this.
Okay, so I'm going to get some as a salesperson. Let's use me as the guinea pig here. I'm a salesperson of 2025. I need to be across this. How am I going to get that information? Explain to me, and Thomas, I'm going to throw this at you first because this is where it all started with you. What do I need? Give me the process, the operating process. Now, let's talk to the ops people who are listening at the moment. What's the operations process of turning this from an idea to where I'm going to actually get data and how I'm actually going to get data? How does this work? It just doesn't come from the air.
No, but I fully agree with Matt that this is a complex world, but I think it starts with you actually being interested in making a difference, listening to your customer, asking your customer, can I help you with anything related to sustainability? The customer will reply, and then, but if you don't care, or if you just do what you normally do, you won't get into that world. You won't get the question from your customer. So that's the first thing. So we can support every salesperson in the channel, either via a web-based tool. We have a nice configuration tool, easy to use. You can get up and running within a day, and then you can extract carbon data for pre-sales and tenders. We have great systems like yours with iasset, being able to deliver carbon data on quoting, on invoice level, and so on. So, and well, you don't need to have a PhD degree to understand this. You can, but you need to have an interest and put a little effort into it. But I think that it mainly comes from interest, from support, or from maybe it could come from top down, the management saying we need to do this, we need to get in line. Then right now we do see a big commercial advantage for everybody getting involved with this, because you can make a difference to all your customers right now. most companies out there, they are using consultancy firms paying lots and lots of money on getting Google data of somebody, some trying to find it on the internet somewhere, and then at the end of the year they will get a report, put it in the drawer, and that's it, instead of actually getting data every single day. And for the IT channel to support their customers like that would make a huge difference, and is actually so valuable that your customers are willing to pay for it. So customers could actually be willing to give you the order instead of somebody else, because you support them with this specific area, which is, as you mentioned, kind of complex for them to handle. So I think there's really a lot of aspects into this, and you can commercialize it. In a few years from now, I think that we will see a world where carbon data and all surrounded sustainability information is licensed to operate. If you want to deal with large international customers, you simply cannot deliver any products to them without having this service alongside, and they might even pay for this service. We also see I will try to make this short and hopefully I can explain it. We see a huge dilemma in the IT industry today because most of the companies out there are using a method called spend-based method. So they are calculating from cost to carbon. The dilemma in that is exactly as you started out with. If you have a new type of server using much more less energy, so being much more energy efficient, but it has a higher cost to it because it might be produced more with more higher pricing components and so on, you will actually face the opposite effect. So you will sell them something which is highly efficient and having a lower footprint, but because it costs a little more in the company's carbon accounting department via spend-based method, it will have the opposite effect. It will have a higher footprint. But if we go to activity-based data, so data related directly to the product, as we are talking about today from Rejoose side, from iasset side, then you will have the actual carbon footprint, the actual value of going from this footprint to this footprint because you chose the right product. That might cost a little more. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this question, and I want all of you to respond to this. You're the C-suite, and you're telling me that I have to care. All I care about is I am an enterprise sales rep. I've got my tentacles into every major sales opportunity in my patch. I will get a seat in the opportunity, all right? But all I care about is feeding my pet Ferrari. So why do I care? What contracts will I miss out on? What opportunities? I'm flipping it on the other side, and that is you should, but what if you don't? What if I don't? Typical arrogant, response from the best salespeople is give me a reason to feed my pet Ferrari. They don't necessarily have the best probably don't have, a view of a corporate responsibility around environment. Many of them will. All of them eventually will. Absolutely. That's the way the world's moving. But, for the next 12 to 18 months, my viewers want to know how I'm going to make money.
Yeah. I wonder how many of those that I don't think that's a typical, by the way. I think that's that's probably out there in the extremes. But I wonder how many of those.
Tesla.
I think that that will depend on that person's attitude to doing loss analysis on the deals that they don't win, because so many of that type of person would just celebrate the wins, ignore the losses, and just keep on trying to get as many wins as possible. I can give you a real world example. I can't name names, but last week we worked with one of our global distribution partners who was working with a Nordics reseller into a very large enterprise in the Nordics. And they were asking the right questions around sustainability. and they used our platform to produce a missions report on comparison solutions. And in the IT channel, we love a comparison sale, right? We're obsessed with a comparison sale, which can be our downfall. But in this instance, it actually worked out great. I can name the vendor. The vendor was Lenovo, and they won the deal. It was a $1.2 million deal, and that was not the cheapest deal on the table, but it was the most carbon efficient. And the end user chose that solution based on the data we provided, and they based that decision on carbon emissions, not on cost. So that's a real world example happening today. So your Ferrari obsessed salesperson, when they start to hear, and that will just grow and grow and grow, by the way, and that's not the only example, that's going to grow and grow, and that will just become part of the culture of the atypical enterprise salesperson will start to think about sustainability in the same way that they think about the rate of a lease or whatever other aspects of a large sale that they're trying to put together.
It goes straight to one of my core values, which price is only an issue when all things are equal. So adding carbon and all the other bits around it removes price from the argument. If the customer asks for a burger and you put the fries, the Coke, and the apple pie together, and it's a better choice for them, they're going to spend more money. It's as simple as that. It's not going to be a price-based conversation.
Yeah. So Scott, that will become more and more important. With my research is telling me that more and more panel contracts have commercial have a commercial aspect associated to environmental responsibility. It's appearing, all right, but that will become table stakes. Probably in about 2-3 years. In the meantime, how does someone introduce that into the conversation so it becomes important and gives them a competitive advantage, given that they're working with, say, a platform such as yours, and they can actually provide the information when others can't? How does that work? Because it has to be proactive as much as it is reactive.
There is an educational piece to it. The rep still has a responsibility to learn, just like they have to learn new technologies and new ways of doing business. And we've gone from bureau computing to premises and then back to cloud, which is bureau computing with color screens, and then I'm sure we'll come back as we are with hybrid at the moment.
Yeah, how do they learn?
They have to stay on the edge of all of those changes, and carbon data is just another change. And circular, if you look at the Irish government, I can't remember how much of the spend this year that they are going to spend on laptops. The laptops have to be refurbished. They can't be new laptops. So the government will be first movers, although, sorry, apologies to all my American friends, for the next 4 years, there's probably nothing going to be happening there. But all the other serious governments are starting to push that, which means the channel will react, as the channel always does, to the demands of the end customer, ultimately.
Yeah.
We have had some very funny talks with some of the resellers, which is evolving around some of the same things we are discussing right now. Is that you can have a reseller saying, but our customer hasn't asked me for this now. So I haven't heard about it. So our question would be, and our recommendation would be, try to go to your customer and say, dear customer, if I can help you with carbon data, reporting data for your IT purchases, would that be of interest to you? Or maybe go check with the sustainability lead and so on. And for 9 out of 10, the response would be, yes, certainly it would be. We didn't know you could support us that. We were talking to our accounting firm or to this consulting firm, and they were going to help us for only $300,000 a year. But that's, and we accepted that. So actually trying to ask your customer to move and understand that the IT channel can actually support their customers within our segment, because we are the best to do so. And it is, of course, like the trusted advisor approach, which we have been talking about all the way back to the 90s once again, is really also key to sustainability.
Yeah, I think globally the markets are all kind of, they're maturing at different rates, and that's part of the challenge. The EU clearly with CSRD is probably the furthest ahead in driving end user demand, because they're making the end users have to report this kind of stuff. And on CSRD, you've got 5,000 companies currently under that umbrella today. That goes up to 50,000 in January next year. But it's not just those companies, because they have to report it. Of course, then their supply chain has to report into them. So there's the knock-on effect is vast of CSRD. People trying to think of it as, oh, it's just the banks and here. It's not. It's it's potentially 500,000 companies next year that will fall into that. And that's not just in the EU. That will be other markets as well. So North America, I think the estimate is 10 to 15,000 companies that will be impacted by CSRD as well.
If you've got a read on that, they go from 5,000 to 50,000 potential customers. Why would you not move quickly to beat the other?
Exactly. Yeah.
What other verticals? I mean, you're saying it's not anything in particular, but you must be seeing some high level early interest, the early adopters of this requirement that are winning contracts because of it. Which target verticals would you be recommending?
I don't, Nick, think it's a vertical question. I think it's at the moment it's a board level appetite question.
Because I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is government. They're all over it, right? So governments are talking about it. Obvious consumers, hard manufacturing wherever it exists. That's the research that I've done is telling me that. But the least active, and this is always the case, right? But the least active of any vertical is the IT vertical, the actual technology manufacturers, the technology publishers, the technology vendors.
I think you're right, and I think the research coming out of Canalys is right. The last year, there's been all sorts of reductions for various US manufacturers on the ESG workforce that they've employed, and there are still a lot of greenwashing positions being put in, especially when you're my favorite position is environment and sustainability. Sustainability and growth. That one, I'm not sure how you wear those two hats, but that's where they're putting them. Ultimately, it's the IT sector that has large European footprints is already moving. They're absolutely on top of this, even if it's just their European staff that are engaged in it, but they are being dragged into it. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange has got ESG type requirement reporting. Australia's behind the 8 ball and America's even further behind them. So different countries, to Matt's point earlier, different countries are more mature than others. But if you're a global manufacturer, you typically, just like EU regulations with safety in cars, usually all the cars are at that level, because there's no point manufacturing a really safe car and then a dodgy Volvo that we're going to send to the other side of the planet, right?
Right. What's interesting, you mentioned something before, and I let it go because this is not a political channel, and it never will be. But I have got a lot of information that I'll make it available to anyone who wants it, and that is with the transition in America that's happening in government. The government's focus is moving from DEI to ISG, and you can have a job in government if you are focused on environmental as opposed to focused on DEI, because it didn't work. Now, I'm not making political statements here. I'm just saying that new government in place cares more about the environment than it says it did. So the North American market and the Canadian market as well is ripe for this. And I suspect that because of what I'm saying, you're going to see this written into tenders, written into panel contracts, particularly in areas of defence. That's where I'm seeing that coming from, and that's public data. That's information that's available. So I need to know about that, because I need to know how to tackle that, and I need to know the kind of conversation that I'm going to have with that. Where do I go to get that information so that I can actually be good at being able to present sustainability, environmental issues relative to the purchase order that I'm chasing? What training is available? Is there? I couldn't find any.
Oh, to Matt's point earlier about imposter syndrome, I'm in the same bucket. I mean, I've been sort of slogging away down here for a number of years without the ESG corporate or the EU directives, but the EU has an awful lot of information on its sites to try and educate the population as to what they need to comply with and what they need to do and how to do it. You know, I'm not sure about the rest of the governments around the world, but that's where I started. When I started my education and trying to work out, are we a scope 3 part of the customer's journey or a scope 2? I mean, we're kind of in that, you know, in between the two of them. You know, the first thing I tell anyone that doesn't understand the whole directive is understand what scope 1, 2, and 3 is. Then you've got a foundation. Then you can move up from that.
Right. Okay. So I'm conscious of time, and we're getting to that mark. So what I want to do is dwell into Matt. You started talking about a use case based on what you couldn't talk about names or anything like that, and of course you can't. But in keeping it generic, what other use cases, Thomas and Scott, are you guys seeing? You know, that makes sense. Make it early for my listeners to be able to say, yeah, you know what, that's me. You know, let's come up with a few more use cases that are going to be useful.
Yeah, I have a few concrete examples. So we discussed a little about this comparison theme we have inside the IT channel, and I think it's really important to know that most of the companies out there are not here to compare right now. They're here to collect data for their reporting needs and to do their own internal baseline of what is their carbon footprint on the company and IT. And from that 2023 baseline, they can then compare their 2024 baseline and so on. And within that, they will, of course, start to tweak and optimize stuff. And some of these optimizations and the use cases we see could be a customer coming to buy thousands or hundreds of laptops or smartphones saying, I would like to have LCA carbon data for these products. And I need to get them before I purchase and maybe during the purchase on the quoting. As soon as I update, I want even the keyboards I buy and the peripherals I need the same, because for many companies, it doesn't really matter if it's a cable or if it's an enterprise storage system. They need carbon data just the same as you need a financial receipt in that world. So these two worlds, if you think about them, that they will merge and be aligned, and you know the financial world, you can actually copy this to the carbon accounting world the companies will face. So typical traditional endpoint solutions, PCs, laptop stuff, putting into a system, getting carbon data, that's one side. And of course, look into models which might have a better footprint, could be on the comparison side. Every vendor has the standard product and the better product. So that's what you could suggest. If we go to the data center side, which is very, very different from the office IT side, the data center, so just one fact, office IT is 70% something carbon footprint coming from production. The data center IT, 70% of the carbon footprint is coming from energy consumption. So two different worlds, two different approaches. So on the data center side, again, back to consultancy, back to good advisory. How can you optimize, consolidate, buy new technology which actually reduces power consumption, might even reduce footprint. And there you might have much more granular and detailed use cases, but it's a similar what a business manager and an account manager would do today, just with the added carbon energy information into the complex TCO calculation.
I think just to add to that, Nick, because I think we're at a critical time. This is such an important time for the industry, because over the next year to 18 months, we're going to be making decisions that are going to set the carbon emissions for this planet over the next 4 or 5 years. We've got PC refresh, which is going to be vast over the next 18 months because of Windows 10 end of life, because you've got the COVID machines that are coming up for refresh, or you've got increased use in Copilot. You've got all of these reasons why the PCs are going to be refreshed. To then service all of those PCs, then we're going to have infrastructure updates and upgrades and refreshes. This is a critical time in the next year to 18 months. We're going to be laying out technology, making decisions on technology with carbon emissions that will have a serious impact on the planet. And we need the data.
And energy consumption, and you touched it. This is where I was kind of wanted to drive it and finish it off. And it's what's going to inform a lot of those purchase decisions is around artificial intelligence and the absolute mega consumption of power that's going to be needed to drive all that already, and that has to be part of it. Otherwise, it's a no go. All right, there is a huge business case to show. So if you want to talk artificial intelligence, you want to talk infrastructures associated to it, and also applications associated to it, you also have to have this part sorted out as proactive. And if I was a salesperson, I'd be just having a ball with it, because that's what they have to hear. All right, and the risk of not having an answer in your quote and in your pitch and in your RFI or RFP is next. They're going to look at the next one, because it is the critical part informing it. Why I'm wrong, people?
You bang on.
There you go. So you guys have come up with a platform. It's the effectively combined. It's the world's first channel CPQ that gives you the information that you need to participate. In other words, you've got participation in every pitch that's going to be associated to it. You'd be mad if you don't. Where do people listening to this channel talk in particular go and get more information? From the Rejoose side and from the iasset side?
Well, I think both. I mean, from an iasset point of view, hit us up on LinkedIn or iasset. We can talk to them about the carbon side, the mechanics of the carbon side for our platform. If it's Rejoose, hit up Thomas or Matt, or hit the Rejoose site. There's lots and lots of information up there, and I urge people to have a demo. If you've got if someone's watching this, they've made it all the way through our scintillating video. The one thing I'd like them to walk away with, though, is we all talk about sustainability, but actually, if we sustain what the world's doing right now, we're dead in the water anyway. You actually have to be regenerative, and that is a critical point that a lot of people don't get. Sustainability is the buzzword, and I have to use it too, because otherwise I confuse people. But actually, we have to reverse the effects, not just stop it where we are now.
What's the business case there, Scott?
Well, survival. Oxygen's good. Heat. Storms.
Yeah, damned if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much it. Damned if you don't.
Yeah.
If you want to keep feeding that pet Ferrari.
Well, our job is to make it easy. That's our collective job, is to make it easy to put carbon data into a customer and make sure they've got the information in order to operate. That's what we're there to do.
And what I really appreciate from this panel is not only have you explained how easy it is to do it, but why you should do it and where you can get information from. So it's the complete picture. I've got to thank you for a tremendous discussion. So important, probably for me now that I can tell the truth, the most important. I know I've played devil's advocate, but the most important in my 40 years of business, the most important topic ever, because the future is not guaranteed unless we take this seriously. And to me, there is no bigger business case. But what you guys have done is essentialized the practical side of how to go about it and make money as you go down that worthy path. Thank you so much. I know we've gone over time, and I really appreciate the time you've given me. This is going to be a great Channel Talks for our audience, and I'm sure we're going to get bombarded, as we usually do, with inquiries and how we go next. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.